But it's only been 5 weeks since President Trump's Liberation Day and the tariffs. But it's already led to multiple successes.
So it's also led to multiple lawsuits, with the first legal test happening today in New York City. Joining us now for more on this, Newsmax senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. So, Judge, always great to see you. So this is what we know. President Trump's global tariffs, they're getting their day in court essentially today. So it's a 3-judge panel.
Right.
The Court of International Trade. Yeah. I had never heard of this court. They're going to hear whether to halt the levies. And this was all brought about by a wine importer. Explain this.
Okay, so the wine importer likes to sell wine for $100 a bottle.
Okay.
With the tariffs, the wine importer would have to sell that same bottle for $150, and he says it will put him out of business. Okay. The real argument is that the president doesn't have the authority to impose the tariffs because he used a statute that requires an emergency. An emergency is a sudden and unexpected event. The emergency that President Trump suggested was the basis for the tariffs was the imbalance of trade, which is not an emergency because we've had it since 1934. That's the argument in a nutshell. The other argument is a tariff is a sales tax, and under the Constitution, only Congress can impose a tax. So if Congress wants to impose the tariffs, this wine company and everybody else is stuck with them. But the president doesn't have the authority to do it on his own. Now, here's what's interesting. You are not alone in never having heard of this court. This is a bona fide federal court that's so far below the radar screen, many lawyers and even judges don't even know it exists. It has jurisdiction over the tariffs. This is not like a judge in New Jersey trying to extend her jurisdiction to California. This is a court in Lower Manhattan that exists to hear complaints about international trade. They could stop the tariffs like that.
Tariffs across the board or just in this specific case?
That's the question.
Okay.
If they find the president acted unconstitutionally, they will stop the tariffs across the board and kick it back to Congress. Then Trump has to craft legislation, and then he has to propose it to Congress. And in the interim, all those tariffs stop. On the other hand, if they say, this is a foreign policy issue, even though it is a sales tax, we're not going to interfere with foreign policy. If you don't like what we said, appeal us. So we don't know how it's going to go. The oral argument is today. And it's a bona fide serious challenge that the DOJ is taking seriously because the White House is a little ill at ease over it.
Now, normally this would just be one judge hearing this case, which is usually, but this is actually going to be a 3-judge panel doing this? What's the significance of that?
Because there is no jury. You have a 3-judge panel. Everybody agrees what the facts are. Everybody agrees the president imposed the tariffs. Here's the amount of the tariffs. Here's when he's imposed them. Here's how much has been collected. There's nothing for a jury to do. So Congress, when it created this court, decided instead of giving all this power to one judge, it's going to be divided amongst 3. So 2-to-1, the tariffs stop. 2-to-1 the other way, the tariffs stay.
Or can be appealed.
Yes, it can be appealed.
So
it can be appealed directly to the Supreme Court of the United States. So it's almost like this is a federal appellate court, which also sits in panels of 3.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. We were talking about this off camera. Chief Justice Roberts speaking at Georgetown Law yesterday and kind of saying some things that we don't normally hear, especially out of judges on the Supreme Court. He said the rule of law is endangered. That's dangerous in itself, to be using that kind of language. What did you make of what he had to say yesterday?
It is the harshest criticism I have ever heard out of a sitting Chief Justice of the executive branch. Even in the dark days of right before Richard Nixon's downfall, you didn't hear language like this out of Chief Justice Warren Burger about the way the White House is behaving. John Roberts is obviously sending a message to the executive branch. Don't tamper with the rule of law. Don't threaten judges. Don't attack them. Of course you can attack what they do. Of course you can disagree with what they say. The remedy is to appeal, not to attack them personally, not to threaten them, not to send messages to other people. Now, there's the Chief Justice. He's just one vote in the Supreme Court. However, as the Chief Justice, he controls a lot of things. He controls the calendar. He decides who writes the opinion. He controls the emergency calendar, and he has a lot of sway with his colleagues. Other than this is unheard of, I'm not sure how to interpret this. Some of what the government, the executive branch is doing is outside the law, and they should comply. A judge says so-and-so's entitled to a hearing before you deport him. You don't deport him. You give him the hearing. Even if the hearing is burdensome and even if the hearing is difficult, the Constitution says you follow the law. The law says he's entitled to a hearing.
I guess, I mean, the thing about, I mean, where was the Chief Justice when then Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was standing on the steps of his courthouse threatening, physically threatening Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch.
By name.
By name.
Yes.
And yet the Chief Justice was quiet. Only when it's Trump does he come out.
That's why it's very unusual, Mark. There's also this rule of ethics that I think I've addressed before that applies to every judge in the land, local, state, federal, except the Supreme Court. And that rule says judges should not enter public disputes. Judges should not use their judicial authority to affect the outcome of a public dispute other than what they do in the courtroom. John Roberts is obviously trying to affect the outcome of a public dispute from outside the courtroom. The more he does that, the more he will appear political. The more he appears political, the less credibility he will have.
Right.
The court needs credibility. It doesn't, as we all know, it doesn't have an army to enforce its rulings. It has credibility.
All right, Judge. We'll see how this plays out.
Is there anything else to talk about?
No, this is great.
I think we caught up this morning.
Yeah, in the coming days, we can talk more about the Menendez brothers.
It's only Tuesday.
Or the Sean Puffy Combs.
There's a lot to dive into there.
Oh, my God.
Okay. More to come tomorrow.
That's X-rated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll G it down.
Not in the morning.
No.
All right. Coming up over the weekend, the U.S. and China announcing a massive